This is the Pad 2, the latest tablet from OnePlus, and with the upgrades and improvements from the previous generation, this is one of the most promising Android tablets that have been recently released. The Pad 2 has a much improved chipset over the last generation and has some pretty amazing specs for the price. But there are also some things that, in my opinion, could hold it back from being the best option for a mid-range tablet, depending on what you're hoping to get out of it, and that's what I want to talk about today. I want to go over the good and bad aspects of the Pad 2, what could be improved, and what will be improved or updated with it, and just my general use over the last 2 weeks. So if you're curious to see what the Pad 2 has to offer, or maybe you're shopping around for a tablet yourself, especially if you're a OnePlus fan, stick around and let's get into it. Hey everyone, Kyle Erickson here. OnePlus has historically been known for providing affordable devices with great value. Last week I looked at the OnePlus Watch 2R that definitely fit the bill in that regard, but the Pad 2 is a little more nuanced. On paper, there's a lot of fantastic elements to this tablet, especially for the price at $549 USD, but actually using this and comparing it to similarly priced tablets, there are a bunch of great things about it in some areas and some where it struggles, and that all starts with the design. The OnePlus Pad 2 has outstanding build quality with an all-metal unibody design that has no seams and is quite sleek with the anodized finish in what OnePlus calls Nimbus Grey. It's 6.49mm thick, which is about average for a tablet these days, and weighs in at 584 grams, which, again, is very similar to other tablets at this size. With that being said, I do really like the rounded edges on here, which makes the Pad 2 feel very comfortable to hold. More so than an iPad or a Galaxy Tab, I would say, if you're just holding it without a case, and it does a pretty good job at not picking up fingerprints, especially for the darker color. Along those rounded edges, you'll find power and volume control buttons, a USB-C port, a Pogo accessory connector for hooking up a keyboard, and a flat surface with a magnet for connecting a pencil. So no 3.5mm headphone jack if that's something that you're looking for, and there's also no IPS rating, which might be important if you're exposing this to the elements a lot, but for most people, probably won't make much of a difference. I'd say the biggest draw to this device is on the front, where you'll find a 12.1-inch display with a 3000 by 2120 resolution and a 144Hz refresh rate, which, again, on paper sounds amazing, but in practice is somewhat of a mixed bag. Now, if you're not much of a display snob, everything on here is gonna look pretty great. This thing goes all the way up to 900 nits peak brightness, which is phenomenal for a panel like this, and with a high refresh rate, everything is gonna be super smooth, especially if you're gaming, which we'll get into in a little bit. But if you're doing anything super color critical, or you're just really picky about display quality, there are some minor things to be aware of. First things first, the color accuracy. I asked OnePlus what the accuracy was of this display because it's not listed anywhere, and I was told this covers about 96% of the NTSC color gamut, which is a bit of a strange color space to refer to, but I did find it was a touch cooler and a bit more contrasty than my color-calibrated displays. It's still very good, and for most people, it's gonna be fine if you're popping into Lightroom to do some quick edits for Instagram or something, or even editing video to some extent. But the other thing that I've noticed on the one that I have in particular is it does have some minor black level uniformity issues, or I'm getting some light bleed around the edges. It's not super noticeable in everyday use, but this is just a touch more than I'm used to seeing on tablets in this price range, and it could just be my panel alone, but I think it is worth mentioning. If you're watching content on here, everything looks great, and this is a Dolby Vision HDR panel, so you really see the details and the light pop. The audio does add to that experience as well, as the Pad 2 has a 6-speaker sound system with something called Halo audio technology, which essentially optimizes the left and right audio channels depending on what orientation you're holding the tablet in. Everything there sounds super clear, and it gets quite loud with no distortion, but it does lack a bit of depth, which is usually the case on tablets like this. The sound and display quality does transfer over to gaming as well, where the Pad 2 has run everything that I've thrown at it with absolutely no issues, as performance is where this tablet really shines. The OnePlus Pad 2 comes with a Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 chipset that runs Oxygen OS 14.1 and Android 14. The one that I have here has 12 gigs of RAM and 256 gigs of storage, which I believe is the only option available in North America and is quite a bit of horsepower for a tablet in this price range. There's a built-in gaming mode, which is great for optimizing gameplay. You can do all the stuff that I've already mentioned, like photo and some video editing, and it runs through productivity-related tasks with no issues. Which kinda leads into the best part about this device in my opinion, which is multitasking. OnePlus has added Open Canvas to the Pad 2, which you may have seen on the OnePlus Open, but with that, I can open up 3 apps on the screen at once, with each app scaled to fit perfectly for the window it's sized to, whether I'm in portrait or landscape mode. There's a bunch of instances where this can be really handy, say if you're listening to music while you're writing, or if you're toggling back and forth between Chrome and taking notes, and you can also expand each window if you'd like. I just find it a little bit easier to manage rather than switching back and forth between apps. This would also be great, say if you're in a meeting where you want to have the meeting app open on one side of the screen and a notes app on the other. Speaking of which, I should also mention the cameras on these. I usually don't put too much emphasis on tablet cameras because the only real instance you'll use these most of the time is for calls or video chats, or for scanning documents, and the Pad 2 cameras are mostly fine for that kind of thing. The front-facing camera is 8 megapixels and gives you a 1080p image that looks decent enough, especially for meetings and things of that nature. And the rear camera is a 13 megapixel sensor that does just okay for scanning documents. It works in a pinch, but I do find it's quite soft for that kind of thing, and general pictures are not very good at all. But like I said, I'm not one to really ever use the back cameras on tablets. There's also a bunch of AI tools coming to the Pad 2 pertaining to pictures or image editing and productivity that you don't currently have on here. There's AI Eraser 2.0 to remove unwanted objects or people from images, the AI Toolbox that will have AI Speak for reading things aloud to you, AI Summary that can condense information into key points, and AI Writer for generating content or text. All of that stuff is coming later this year, and most of it we're used to seeing on other devices or platforms as well, so that really shouldn't come as a surprise by any means. I know not everyone is going to use that stuff, but it can be certainly helpful in some instances for things like productivity, but in my opinion, the most important part of being productive with these devices is by having the right accessories, and OnePlus gives you a couple of options on that front. You've got the OnePlus Smart Keyboard that magnetically attaches to the 3-pin connector that I mentioned earlier, which I do have mixed feelings about. As far as the positives go, I love that you can connect it through that 3-pin connector, and you can also pair it with Bluetooth, so you don't necessarily need to have this physically connected if you don't want to. The typing experience is great, and the trackpad is a lot larger than the previous version and has a nice tactile click to it. But I find it sometimes inadvertently starts highlighting text or selecting things while I'm scrolling. And I do wish that the flexible piece between the connector and the tablet was a little stiffer or sturdier. I just find that it feels a little bit flimsy, both when it's laying flat on a table and when it's folded against the display. It tends to move around quite a bit, and it makes it almost impossible to use on your lap. It does have a really neat NFC feature built into it, where if you have a OnePlus phone, you'll be able to transfer files over by tapping on the keyboard, but for me, it's mostly just okay in terms of features and quality, but the Stylo 2 pen, on the other hand, is something that I've really liked so far. The one that I have here is textured black and has 16,000 levels of pressure sensitivity, which I found does work quite well. There's also a motor inside of here that makes the pen vibrate, that changes the vibration depending on what tip you have selected, and that simulates writing on paper, which actually feels really satisfying. I've been using it mostly for sketching out 3D prints and some light photo editing here and there, and I've really enjoyed it so far. It's also nice that charges wirelessly on the Pad 2 through the magnet area at the top. And speaking of wireless, if you prefer to use other accessories with this tablet, you do have the latest and greatest in wireless connectivity with Bluetooth 5.4 and Wi-Fi 7. Bluetooth has been great for me. I haven't had any drops, and there is a good amount of range, but Wi-Fi performance hasn't been good at all compared to my other devices with Wi-Fi 6 and above support. I'm not sure exactly what's going on there, but it should be performing much better. Maybe there's an update that needs to happen or something, but it is noticeably slower than most devices that I've tried over the last couple of years. It's something that I'm definitely going to keep my eye on, but in contrast to that, when it comes to the battery life, the Pad 2 has been outstanding. Inside here, there's a 9,510 mAh battery, and I've been able to get well over a full day of moderate use on it, no problem. When it does come time to charge it, I can get just over a 50% charge in around a half hour or so, and it takes roughly an hour and a half to charge it from 0 to 100, which comes via a 67 watt VOOC charger, which is very good and really all you need for a device like this. Now, there are also some other features that you'll get if you have a OnePlus phone outside of the NFC transfer that I mentioned, like seamless cell data sharing, auto syncing between devices, and some really neat content sync stuff. So if you do have a OnePlus phone, there's probably a little more incentive for you to pick one of these up, but for anyone else, there are other options out there that may or may not be a better fit depending on what your needs are. What I would say that the OnePlus Pad 2 does give you is a great display with some fantastic multitasking features. There's loads of power in here for gaming, and frankly, pretty much anything that you want to do on here. And for a 12-inch tablet with everything that you get here, $549 USD is really competitively priced. There are some weak elements with the keyboard, and the Wi-Fi speed is somewhat concerning, although it's not perceivable most of the time. And I guess defining this as good really depends on how you value all these different things. Speaking of which, let me know in the comments down below what you guys value out of all these specs and features. That's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed this video or you found it useful. If you did, feel free to hit that like button. If you'd like to see more tech-related content or spend the day with me writing scripts for a sock puppet theater, please subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next upload.